Peter King. He is also chairman of the House Subcommittee on Counterterrorism. Congressman King, good to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. You know, as you watched that today, what was your takeaway? Because it was clearly, it became pretty political pretty quickly.
It really does, and I think that the Democrats are doing the American people a disservice, and they're certainly doing the reputation of the House and Senate a disservice by constantly dwelling on Russia, trying to make believe that something is there when it's not there. Listen, if this investigation leads anywhere, I'll be the first to acknowledge it. But so far, and I've sat in almost all the interviews of all the main witnesses, I've seen no evidence whatsoever showing any collusion between the president and Russia. Now they try to take legitimate acts that he takes as president and somehow say that's obstruction of justice. I mean, this has gone so far afield, and they forget. They're talking about the commander-in-chief of the United States. They're talking about a president who has to negotiate with countries all over the world, and they're doing nothing but spreading this false narrative, these lies, and this whole implication that he was involved with Russia when there's no evidence of that at all.
You know, I mean, when you listen to all of them, and I watched them this morning, going through all these different threats, and they're very thoughtful, intelligent people. You know, you look at Mike Pompeo, graduated first in his class at West Point, and he's going through the threat assessment. And then you hear some of these members of Congress just constantly trying to pull it back to Russia. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be very concerned about any meddling in our elections. And as Ed Henry just pointed out, Mike Pompeo said that they are absolutely looking into all of those possibilities for the future, and they take it very, very seriously. But you wonder if it's not sort of this red herring that is keeping our eye off the ball of all of these other extremely important things.
Martha, I can't emphasize enough how serious these other issues are. We're talking about North Korea. We're talking about China as an emerging threat. We're talking about Russia still subverting throughout the world. And we're talking about ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And they're talking about cyber attacks coming from really so many different countries, cyber attacks. We're talking about Israel and Iran. We're talking about Syria. We're talking about what's going to happen in Iraq. These are major, major issues confronting us. And they're the ones that can mean life or death for Americans. Instead, again, pursue Russia. Once it's started, we should finish it. But let's not blow it out of proportion. Let's keep it in perspective. And right now, the perspective is that there's nothing there, nothing significant. I'd say nothing at all is there. And these other threats are for real. North Korea is for real. China is really emerging as again, more and more as a global power. And you still have all the Islamist terrorism, which can attack us over there or right here in our homeland.
You know, when you look at the Russia investigation, because, while all of these wheels are spinning, and we've seen a lot of investigative work done on Capitol Hill as well, Robert Mueller is plodding away day after day on his investigation. Is there any sense of how long it will take? As you point out, it's been going on for 18 months now. Will we ever get an indication as to when that work might wrap up?
People who are reading the tea leaves think that Robert Mueller is certainly winding it down or is coming closer to the end. On the Intelligence Committee, I think the Democrats want us to call 87 more witnesses, was the number I heard. But we have to finish that up. Once we have, I think, a few more witnesses, we should be ready to start preparing a report and go with that. We owe it to the American people to resolve this, not to keep it hanging out there forever. And again, we're not going to get any cooperation. Unfortunately, no cooperation at all, as I see it, coming from the Democrats. They want to keep this out there. It doesn't matter to them that they're tearing down the office of the president, and they say they're just going after President Trump. They're tearing down the office by keeping this constant pressure on when there's nothing there.
All right. In terms of wrapping that up, what is your read on whether or not you're going to hear from Steve Bannon on the Intel Committee this week?
My understanding is we are, but until we see it, I'm not going to fully believe it. I was there the last time when he said that the White House wouldn't let him answer questions. And I'm not a Bannon fan. Maybe I'm the wrong one to ask. But on the committee, I expect to see him come in. But I'm not going to hold my breath.
In terms of negotiations, because back then his lawyers were saying that he was only going to discuss things that happened during the campaign, not after the president took office. Has there been a resolution on that issue?
I'm not certain if it's been fully resolved. I know they were coming close to it. First, we had the House counsel negotiating with him. Then I believe the committee counsel themselves got involved. And I'm hoping that he can be in this week. That was my hope. I still want to see him in there. I think that he has questions to answer. But again, until he actually appears and takes the oath again, I don't believe it.
But what about we're going to talk in the next block to Byron York about a very interesting piece that he wrote about Michael Flynn, suggesting that when Michael Flynn was questioned by FBI agents in the White House, that he didn't have a lawyer present, that he didn't see it as an investigatory discussion, and that they didn't find in that interview that he had done anything wrong. So, any thoughts on how we got from there to him admitting guilt to lying to FBI agents if the FBI agents walked out of there saying that it went all right, that he was okay?
Well, first of all, I would listen to Byron York. That's all I can say about the actual testimony of General Flynn. Listen carefully to Byron York. Secondly, as to where he ended up, where he was, there were rumors that, it's not rumors, there were stories that the prosecutors were leaning on his son. Also, Michael Flynn is pretty much out of money. And he was really, even though he's a man of honor, he was given the opportunity to plead to a lesser offense. So I think a lot of that played into it. That I think it was one of those deals where they felt if they really wanted to, they could have indicted him on it, but in most cases they probably wouldn't have. But when you have that hanging over your head, when you've run out of money, and when your son may be in trouble as well, or they're threatening to have your son in trouble, sometimes you have to fall on your sword.
Peter King, thank you very much, Congressman. Always good to see you.